Hey there, folks. You're tuned into the BL Chronicles channel. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to keep the motivation flowing for more videos. Alpha wants to whip my scent gland for revenge. For Bai Yue Guang's hypersensitive Wen Shao Jun, it's all gone off the rails as he mistakes me for Bai Yue Guang. He's hell-bent on marking me someone who's always stared at me like I'm a block of ice, now suddenly turns wild. I'm being overtaken by this feral beast. Tanan, I'm missing you so much it's driving me insane. I shut him down, tears of agony streaming down my face as I resist Wen Shao Jun. Take a good look. I'm Tan Han. My brother is no longer around, but Wen Shao Jun has lost all sense. He's crazily tearing at my lips, that rich taste like fine red wine dripping down my soul, sinking into every cell of my body. What a mess. The pain hits me like a truck, leaving me weak. Tears roll down my cheeks, soaking my face. This agony can't hold a candle to the heartache of being marked while he calls out someone else's name. His eyes are filled with deep affection, but it's not meant for me. He has no idea that I've secretly loved him since I was just a younger disciple at his side. I fell for him 5 years back, but he's never taken his gaze off my brother until that horrific accident happened. A runaway truck barreled in, and to save me, my brother became a human shield, leaving us forever on that day. From that moment on, my parents started blaming me, while Wen Shao Jun wished it were me who bit the dust that day. That's because he wanted to confess his feelings to my brother. With revenge on his mind, he volunteered to marry me instead. I was thrilled to the point of floating, thinking he had developed feelings for me. But after the wedding, he only set out to torture me without an ounce of mercy. On our wedding night, he choked me and pinned me to the bed. You know what? I was all set to confess to your brother that day. Why wasn't it you in that casket? I've often wondered why it wasn't me. My pheromones smelled just like my brother's. I had foolishly thought we could slowly build up feelings and clear the misunderstandings. For the love of him, I humbled myself, believing if my brother and I shared the same pheromones, he'd treat me sweetly. But through Wen Shao Jun's eyes, I'm just an eyesore. I tried releasing pheromones to attract him, but he dragged me into the shower for 2 hours of icy water and called me depraved during my heat. I knelt on the floor begging for his comfort. Instead, he mercilessly tormented me, forcing me to endure the anguish alone. I was completely hopeless and enlightened. But then in his heat, he forcibly marked me. Wen Shao Jun, you'll be regretting this. We were tangled together for 3 exhausting days. I gently touched his face and whispered. Sure enough, after his heat, Wen Shao Jun was deeply contrite. He pushed me away, his face cold, and said callously, "Are you enjoying this, Tan Han? Finally, it's happened. I marked you, but you really think that will make me like you?" Wen Shao Jun is known as the pride of the heavens, and he hated being bound by pheromone compatibility. But this time he couldn't resist. With a heart full of regret and anger, he thought I was trying to seduce him on purpose. You don't deserve pheromones like her. I lay on the bed, struggling to turn my head, each word slicing through my soul. Wen Shao Jun, you're the one who forced me to be marked. I reminded him, I'm not your brother Tanan. That was taboo for him. Just mentioning it made him lose control. He yelled at me to shut my mouth, saying I wasn't worthy to call him brother. He slammed the door on his way out, leaving me exhausted on the bed without a soul to care for me. My body was covered in terrifying bruises, my scent gland so swollen it felt unbearable. I was burning up, dehydrated, barely able to get out of bed. Without Wen Shao Jun's command, the servants wouldn't dare come near me. Just when I thought I'd die in that bed, the door suddenly swung open with a kick. Wen Shao Jun walked in, his gaze dark with disgust upon seeing me. He commanded the bodyguards to take me away. I was roughly shoved onto the operating table, and in an instant, I understood his true intention to remove my scent gland. I pleaded with him not to do it. If my scent gland got removed, how would I be able to live? I begged as tears streamed down my face. As an Omega without a scent gland, what's left for me? In desperation, I tried to drag myself off the operating table despite the pain coursing through my body. But Wen Shao Jun was unwavering. He grabbed my hair, his eyes filled with disdain. I've had enough of your pheromones smelling just like that guy. He said, please don't do this. I sobbed. I was ready for surgery to erase the mark. My desperate words finally made Wen Shao Jun pause. He thought for a moment, then decided, all right, we'll get you clean. This surgery will erase the mark without cutting out your scent gland. It'll leave me unable to release pheromones for a long while, but at least it won't severely threaten my life. However, since our compatibility is so shockingly high, everything is still going to be a huge shock. I lay there trying to prepare myself for what was to come while Wen Shao Jun stood by, his eyes still brimming with hatred. Wen Shao Jun agreed, a wicked smile spreading across his face. Then he turned his back and walked away, leaving me all alone on the operating table. After the surgery was completed, my alpha scent completely vanished, and all the pheromone ties between me and Wen Shao Jun also came to an end. In the days following the surgery, I kept feeling an agonizing heat in my scent gland, my body reacting powerfully to the changes. I had to endure vomiting, insomnia fever, and zero appetite, not even feeling the closeness and pheromones from Wen. The surgery is finally done, and my alpha scent has completely vanished. Every pheromone link between me and Van Thieu Quan has also come to an end. As the traces were wiped away in the early days post-surgery, I felt a connection lingering. I kept feeling a persistent ache in my glands. It was like my body was throwing a tantrum because of all this change. I had to endure nausea, insomnia, a high fever, and zero appetite, not even the closeness or pheromones from Van. The lack of soldiers makes me instinctively feel afraid that this surgery is about to steal my life away. I realize that loving Van Thieu Quan is like a butterfly flitting into the fire. The only outcome can be turning to dust. Sometimes I feel really jealous of my older brother. He always got more love from our parents, had stellar grades, and a personality that lit up a room. He was adored like a top-notch Omega. After he passed away, my parents and even my husband missed him dearly while I was left in the shadows, feeling all the hate. Let's just get divorced, I suggested when Van Thieu Quan came back home handing him the divorce papers. He tightened his grip around my neck, his gaze filled with malice. You must atone for Tan An's sake. For all eternity, don't even think about divorce. But I didn't do anything wrong, and tears of a star sign rolled down my cheek. I knew Van Thieu Quan would always keep me stuck. If he insists, I'll spend this life atoning for my brother. I looked at Van Thieu Quan with anguish, his hands still wrapped around my throat, the veins in his arms bulging. Eventually, he tiredly released me. If you die, will Tan An come back? He sighed. I want you to live, spend the rest of your days apologizing to Tan An. Living with this regret, being forever tied to a cold, abusive husband, meant I would have to endure the unendurable. When the next heat cycle rolled around, I'd once again feel like I was living a nightmare, and Van Thieu Quan would just watch with an ice-cold expression. Back in the day when we were in school, Van Thieu Quan had a fantastic bond with my brother. They were in the same class, and sometimes I'd drop by to pick up my brother after classes, and Van Thieu Quan would gently call me his little brother. He treated me so well, buying me snacks with his pocket money just because he cherished my brother. I wanted to free Van Thieu Quan from this twisted bond, give him back to my brother's memories instead of sticking around after my brother's passing. The first time I boldly returned home, I never expected my dad to slap me hard. What on earth are you doing? Van Thieu Quan wants a divorce and is pulling out of the partnership. Do you have any idea how much money I lost? Right from the start, you were never as smart as your brother. Now marrying into the Van family, and you can't even pull your weight. My face went pale, and my mom sat coldly in the corner of the room, refusing to look at me. They were still resentful towards me. If that day I hadn't let my brother come to pick me up, he wouldn't have died. I get it. I'm sorry. Half a month later, I found myself back on the operating table, unable to divorce. My husband didn't love me, nor did he comfort me. So what's the point in keeping my omega glands? Removing the glands means you won't be a complete omega anymore, and there's a chance you'll even die. Are you really sure? The doctor asked. Absolutely, I replied. I was determined to shut my eyes, not wanting to endure the agony of my heat any longer. Van Thieu Quan wouldn't ever mistake me for my brother because of my pheromones again. But just as the doctor was checking before surgery, he suddenly paused. You're pregnant. Do you still want to go through with the surgery? I was stunned, my emotions swirling, and a wave of hope washed over me. Upon returning home, I showed the pregnancy test results to Van Thieu Quan, hoping it would tug at his heartstrings. But I was truly too naive. He dismissed it. He said a child born without love shouldn't even exist. At that moment, I felt like I had fallen into a freezing abyss. Van Thieu Quan, I'm begging you, I want to keep this child. But he forcefully pushed me away, regretting the incident that had marred me. The test paper fluttered to the ground like a discarded scrap. I kneeled down, clutching it tightly in my hand. No one loves me but this child. Will love me. Yet Van Thieu Quan snatched away my only hope. I was locked in the waiting room, waiting for the doctor to perform the abortion. I was so desperate that I felt numb. Because of the hormones raging during my pregnancy, my pheromones filled the room. Later that evening, Van Thieu Quan burst into my room stinking of alcohol, his breath reeking, fueled by my pheromones. He rushed in, embracing me tightly. "Tan, and I missed you so much," mistaking me again for my older brother Tan Han. It seemed like Van Thieu Quan was crying, his face streaked with tears. Holding me, he choked out, "Why did you leave me? Why did you save him?" "That's right, you've always been this kind. When I was just 14, I used pheromones to soothe him." That was the first time I felt the warmth of an Omega's embrace. Suddenly, childhood memories surged back. I stood frozen in place. When we were kids, we lived next to the Van family. At that time, Van Thieu Quan didn't even know. My brother and I, our parents often spoke about how strict the family was, that their son was the heir undergoing brutal training every day. One time I snuck out to play, only to see him covered in wounds, hiding in the desolate backyard of my home. The overpowering scent of alcohol was dizzying, pushing me towards the brink of fainting. "Does it hurt?" His older brother was in a daze. I could only release a bit of comforting pheromone, holding him close. Afterward, he squeezed me even tighter. At that time, I had just turned into an Omega, terrified of what he might do to me. "What's your name?" I panicked, fearing that my parents might find out I'd interacted with a strange alpha right after my transformation. I hurriedly blurted out my brother's name. "I'm Tan An." It turned out he'd always remembered. It turned out that Moonlight was me. He'd always loved the wrong person. I cried and laughed at the same time, embracing him tightly, like I did back when we were kids. I have to admit, even now, I've always had a crush on Van Thieu Quan. The minty scent became even stronger. Van Thieu Quan lost control. The aroma of wine gradually spread throughout the room, even though he had erased the traces. But at that moment, I still couldn't help but be influenced by his pheromones. "Don't," I said. "Van Thieu Quan, calm down." I clutched my stomach, trying to back away, but driven by desire, he tore my shirt, even pressing me down with pheromones. "Don't reject me, Tan An, I'm Tan Han." His desperate cries couldn't pull him back to reality. With all my strength, I slapped him. "Van Thieu Quan, the baby, will be in danger," I pleaded, tears streaming down my face. Why did I save him? Right, I've always been this kind-hearted. When I was just 14, I used pheromones to comfort him. It was the first time I ever felt the warmth of holding an Omega. 14 years old, and suddenly those old memories came flooding back. I stood there stunned. When we were kids, we lived next to the Van family. Back then, Van Thieu Quan was still clueless. My brother and parents often talked about how strict his family was, and their son was the heir undergoing harsh training every day. One time, I snuck out to play and saw him covered in wounds, hiding in my backyard like a stray cat. The pheromones were all out of whack, and the stench of alcohol nearly knocked me out. "Does it hurt?" His brother was dazed. I could only release a bit of comforting pheromones and hugged him tightly. Then he clung to me even tighter. The chaos, coupled with the overpowering smell of alcohol, nearly knocked me out cold. "Are you hurt?" His brother seemed to be in a daze. I could only let out a bit of comforting pheromone and hugged him tightly. Then he squeezed me even tighter. Back then, I had just transformed into an Omega and was terrified of what he might do. "What's your name?" I panicked, afraid my parents would find out I'd just metamorphosed and was now mingling with a strange alpha. I blurted out my brother's name. "I'm Tan An." Turns out he always remembered. It's like that Moonlight was meant for me all along. He was always falling for the wrong person. I cried and laughed just like when we were kids, hugging him tight. I have to admit, my crush, I'm Tan An. Turns out he's always remembered me. That Moonlight was actually me. He's always been in love with the wrong person. I was laughing and crying at the same time, just like when we were kids, wrapping him up in a bear hug. I have to admit, it's true. Even now, I still have feelings for Van Thieu Quan. The mint scent was getting stronger. Van was losing control. The aroma of red wine spread through the room despite the traces vanishing. Yet I couldn't help but be overwhelmed by his pheromones. "No, Van Thieu Quan, calm down." I clutched my stomach and stepped back, but driven by desire, he ripped my shirt apart and pushed his pheromones on me. "I'm totally under the influence of his pheromone. No, please, Wen Shao King, calm down." I hugged my stomach and started to back away, but Wen Shao King, driven by desire, ripped my shirt off, even using pheromones to pin me down. "Don't reject me, Tan An. I'm Tan Han." His desperate shout couldn't pull him back to sanity. I mustered all my strength and slapped him across the face. "Van Thieu Quan, the baby is in danger," I cried and prayed. I begged him, but it was totally pointless. The pain made me feel like I could just pass out. The next morning, Van Thieu Quan woke me up with a face full of fury and confusion. Why on earth did I sleep with him? His face looked terrible. He immediately bolted out of bed, distancing himself from me. When I saw him awake, I quickly tried to explain. "Van Thieu Quan, you got wasted last night, and you mentioned that when you were 14, you met an Omega. That was me, but you thought. You mistook me for my brother because our pheromones are similar. I mentioned my brother's name, so he never had a reason to suspect. We might have had a chance, but I messed everything up completely. You're talking nonsense." What is this? Trying to trick me with some nonsense. Huh. Van Thieu Quan clearly didn't believe me. He shot me a cold stare, but I could tell he was a bit panicky. I'm not lying. Before he could finish his sentence, he just turned around and stormed out. The door was left wide open, and I bit down on the pain in my body, taking the chance to escape. I leaned on the thought of Van Thieu Quan making me have an abortion and ran off to a small town to hide. Without Ampa's pheromones soothing my pregnancy symptoms, things were hitting the fan hard. Within a mere 2 months, I was throwing up like the world was spinning, unable to eat or sleep, and my hair was falling out. Once upon a time. Now I look so bad I can't even bear to look at myself. The impact on the baby inside me led me to decide to go to the hospital for options. But at that moment, the doctor dropped a bombshell. "You can't keep this baby. The pregnancy isn't progressing healthily. Your body is too weak, so we recommend termination. If you try to carry on, both you and the baby could die." I was staggered. Ultimately, I still couldn't keep the baby. Leaving the hospital, I felt like a zombie wandering the streets. I was crying like a baby. I couldn't bear to touch my belly, but knew deep down that with my current state, the baby likely wouldn't survive. "Van Thieu Quan, I won't like you anymore. Instead of being forced by him to go under the knife for an abortion, I'd rather end it myself. That misunderstanding with Bai Nguye Kwang, so let's just leave it at that. Let's terminate the baby and take out the gland too. I no longer want to be an Omega causing trouble for the doctors." The surgery dragged on forever, and in just one night, the two most important things in my life were snatched away. I felt cold all over, like my blood was slowly running dry. With the gland and the baby gone, I completely became a broken Omega. My body was weak to the extreme, and not long after I was diagnosed with depression. With no one around, I often sat by the window, lost in thought. Pictures of Van Thieu Quan secretly pursuing my brother kept flashing in my mind. He was so caring and gentle, to the point that his feelings for me were real, but he was also genuinely nice to my brother. If I hadn't known the truth, maybe I wouldn't be in such pain now. I walked into the therapist's office, having just chatted with the doc. When I finished, there was a commotion at the door, footsteps pounding. Van Thieu Quan and my parents rushed in, their faces filled with worry. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands. "Tan Han, I know everything now. It was a mix-up when I was 14. Your brother is still overseas. That Omega is you, the one I've loved all along." His eyes were full of regret. If this were before, I might have cried tears of joy, but now it was just too late. Slowly, I withdrew my hand. Van Thieu Quan looked at me bewildered and terrified. The baby was gone, and my gland had been removed. "Van Thieu Quan, it's too late for us." In that moment, his face turned pale and his eyes reddened. The baby was gone, yet he quickly seemed to grasp on to the last shred of hope. "Tan Han, is there still a chance for me to make things right?" I looked at him flatly, finding everything utterly absurd. Before the abortion, I still held some hope for this marriage, but for 2 grueling months, I was tortured by pregnancy symptoms, feeling worse than death. I barely held it together when I found out I couldn't keep the baby, and I had no one by my side. My parents didn't care, and Van Thieu Quan still pitifully believed that he hadn't made a mistake. "It's too late. Let's get a divorce." "Van Thieu Quan, it's time for us to call it quits." As soon as I said that, I felt like I dropped a heavy burden. With the gland gone, there was nothing left between Van Thieu Quan and me to salvage. He looked at me, his face pale, and the once dashing figure now just seemed broken. "Do you even understand what it means for an Omega to get their gland cut off?" My father scolded softly, his face full of shock and regret no longer mattered. "I'm tired," I answered calmly. While Van Thieu Quan's hands trembled from gripping tightly, the repeated shocks seemed like too much for him to handle. Han, I've loved you all these years. I won't give up on you. I made a mistake, but I will fix everything between us." His eyes were red and his voice hoarse. In the end, he insisted on taking me home. I was imprisoned by Van Tu Quan. He invited a ton of caregivers and doctors to monitor my condition every minute. My mental health was in shambles. I lost my gland, and after the miscarriage, my body was in dire straits. Van Tu Quan listened to the doctor's report, sank to the floor, weeping. I just sat there silently on the bed, and I could tell he felt exhausted and empty. After the doctor left, he gently hugged me and kissed my lips. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Han Han. It's all my fault. I'll heal you." Van Tu Quan's voice trembled with fear, but I just smiled faintly, pushing him away. A broken mirror, no matter how you piece it back together, will always have cracks. He stood there speechless, still unable to find the words. The next morning, I woke up to something licking my foot. It turned out to be a tiny white kitten, probably only a few months old. It curled up at the foot of the bed, and when it saw me wake up, its big eyes looked at me so utterly adorable. His face turned red, his voice hoarse. In the end, he forcibly took me home. Van Tu Quan locked me up. He called in a bunch of nurses and doctors wanting to monitor my condition minute by minute. Mentally, I was in shambles, lost my glands, and felt weak after the miscarriage. My body was completely wrecked. Van Tu Quan listened to the doctor's report, regretting so much that he knelt and cried. I just sat silently on the bed. Maybe he felt exhausted and empty. After the doctor left, he got up, hugging me gently and kissing my lips. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Han Han. It was all my fault. I will heal you." His voice carried fear, but all I could do was smile weakly and push him away. A broken mirror, no matter how well you piece it together, is still just a mass of cracks. He stood there stunned, unable to say a word. The next morning, Wen Shao King's expression was a mix of fear, but I just smiled faintly and pushed him away. A broken mirror, no matter how you piece it back together, is still full of cracks. He stood there stunned, unable to find his words. The next morning, I woke up, and felt something licking my feet. It turned out to be a little white cat, looking only a few months old. It curled up at the end of my bed, and when it saw me waking up, it opened its big eyes and looked adorable. Van Tu Quan walked in, smiling gently. "Do you like it? You once said you wanted a cat, and now it's yours." He coaxed, placing the kitten in my lap. I stroked at my heart, unable to resist. Feeling a bit soft, I decided to name it Han Han, hoping it would grow up to be a different version of myself, loved and sheltered. But one day, it bit me and dashed out of the room faster than a cheetah. I stared at the blood on my hand, watching the cold figure of Han Han disappear. My mind was reeling. I realized I was left with nothing at all and fainted without even knowing it. In my hazy state, I could hear chatter from the doorway. I know everyone has always disliked Han Han, but I hoped they could face it, apologize, and explain, even if it was just for show. Han Han was struggling, needing a lot more love, especially from parents. It suddenly struck me as both sad and disgusting that getting an apology and love from parents needed someone else to twist their arms. The door creaked open, and I pretended to still be asleep, shutting my eyes tightly. They tiptoed around my bed. Slowly, I opened my eyes to see them. Their previous indifference and disdain had turned into heartbreak and regret. We had really messed up with our child. The death of my brother had nothing to do with you. Our sorrow had blindly led us to wrongly blame you. If I hadn't heard those words from Van Tu Quan just now, I might have felt a twinge of compassion, but now, looking at their regretful faces, all I could see was a really good performance. It was all a grand charade. My brother was gone, the kid was no longer around, and even that little cat seemed like it couldn't care less. Nobody in this world really cared about me anymore. I couldn't hold back anymore and gagged. Han Han Van Tu Quan rushed over, panicking, hugging me, while I was heaving, feeling absolutely miserable. I was downright queasy. With teary eyes cradling my stomach, my weak voice piped up. "You guys should just leave. I don't need your fake pity. I heard everything you said at the door. No more acting." The room fell silent, their faces turning confused and pale instantly. I was leaning weakly against the bed when Van Tu Quan, utterly regretful, dropped to his knees, clutching my hand. "This is my fault. Please give me another chance to love you from the start. Can you do that? Han Han, don't leave me, please." I couldn't help but laugh. In my mind, I thought how naive Van Tu Quan was, thinking a few words could wipe away all the past hurts. Love me from the beginning. I didn't have the strength to return his love anymore. I pulled my hand away, looking at him coldly, ruthlessly ripping the scabs off old wounds. When my brother had died, I ended up in the emergency room. My parents didn't visit me even once. And then he came barging in, choking me, asking why I wasn't the one who died. Later, when he married me and I had an episode, he just watched me suffer without giving me the necessary medication. My skin had gotten all gnarly and rotten from suppressing my episodes without medication. It had been ruined for quite a long time. Once I got home, my parents abandoned me too, blaming my brother. Why did he sacrifice himself to save me? I had to comfort my brother, who was drunk, forcing me to kneel down in front of his photo and apologize. When I lay on the operating table forced to terminate the baby and cut out the gland, he was still hesitating, thinking I might be lying. I calmly recounted their cruel actions from the past, and Van Thieu Quan was completely shattered. He dropped to the ground, slapping himself hard across the face, the sound echoing painfully in the room. I was ready to continue ripping open those unhealed scars. "Stop talking, Han Han, please. Just don't say any more," he pleaded with a hoarse voice, finally breaking down to the point of coughing up a mouthful of blood. The room became chaos as countless doctors rushed in to help. I lay on the bed, feeling my body grow wearier. In my dreams, I saw my brother sometimes gently comforting me. "Han Han, don't cry." Other times, he looked at me angrily, blaming me. He regretted sacrificing his life to save me. My brother and I were always so close. He was always the one who took great care of me. When I first met Van Thieu Quan at school, I saw him shining with awards and confidence, and I secretly had a crush on him without even realizing it. But watching him pursue my brother every single day, I understood that this love would go nowhere, since the one he liked was my brother. Regardless, I had never resented my brother because he was always so talented and worthy of love. All I wished was for those two to be happy. But then disaster struck. My brother died saving me, and I, along with Van Thieu Quan, became sworn enemies. On the wedding day, I carried the regret of my brother, fearing he would blame me for taking away the one he loved. But I found out everything had gone wrong from the start. Van Thieu Quan had never truly loved my brother. He had mixed up the person he met at 14, thinking it was not my brother Tan An, but actually me, Tan Han, misremembering both the past and love. I tried to get out of bed, bought a bottle of alcohol, and went alone to my brother's grave. His grave was located in the cemetery of the Van family. I stumbled and knelt before the headstone, looking at his smiling face in the picture. "Bro, I miss you." I lifted the bottle like a toast to him, tears streaming down my face, but I could no longer hear his gentle voice comforting me. If only I had said my name that day, maybe everything would have been different. All of this was my fault. I drank half the bottle, drifting off while clutching the gravestone, crying, as if trying to unload all the sadness within. But the pain remained exactly the same, not easing one bit. Before I passed out, I saw Van Thieu Quan rushing toward me, panic written all over his face. "Han Han, why are you here? Don't pass out. I'm begging you." Looking at his worried expression, I couldn't help but laugh. "Van Thieu Quan, I don't hate you anymore." After saying that, I gently closed my eyes. The sounds of machines emitted a familiar beeping sound mixing with the unpleasant smell of antiseptics. The sharp pain in my stomach jolted me awake. My whole body felt floppy with absolutely no strength left. I opened my eyes, disgusted, to find myself in the hospital once more, the stark white walls surrounding me. Memories flooded back of when I had my gland removed, the fear from that moment. I let him go and snapped at my brother. "Why did you sacrifice yourself to save me?" To console my brother, he got drunk and pinned me down in front of his picture, forcing me to kneel and apologize. When I lay on the operating table, forced to abort the baby and remove my glands, he was still hesitating, thinking I might be lying. I calmly recounted their past cruel actions, and Van Thieu Quan completely broke down. He knelt on the ground, slapping himself hard across the face, the sound cracking sharply in the room. I was going to keep ripping open those unhealed scars. "Stop talking, Han Han. I'm begging you, don't say any more," he choked. I slapped my face hard, the sound echoing through the room. I was ready to rip open those unhealed scars. "Stop talking, Han Han. Please just stop. I'm begging you." His voice was hoarse. He collapsed so much that he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The room was in chaos as numerous doctors rushed in to save him. I lay on the bed, feeling my body becoming increasingly exhausted. In my dreams, I saw my brother sometimes gently comforting me. "Han Han, don't cry," and other times looking at me in anger. He regretted taking his life to save me. My brother and I were always very close. He always took care of me better than anyone. The first time I met Van Thieu Quan at school, seeing him shine with a stack of awards and confidence, I realized I had secretly liked him from the start. But watching him pursue my brother every single day, I understood that this would lead nowhere since he was after my brother. Still, I never blamed my brother because he was always capable and worthy of. He gently comforted me. Han Han, don't cry. Then he would look at me angrily like it was my fault. He regretted giving up his life to save me. My brother and him have always been close. He's always been the best at taking care of me. The first time I met Wen Shao King at school, he shone with awards and confidence, and I found myself crushing on him out of nowhere. But then I saw him chasing my brother every single day, and I realized this love story would go nowhere since he liked my brother, not me. Despite it all, I never held it against my brother because he was always so capable and deserving. They all have a crush on my brother, and I totally get it. That romance isn't going anywhere since the only one he likes is my bro. Still, I never held it against him because he's always been the smart and talented one. Love. I just wished those two could be happy. But then disaster struck. My brother died, saving me, and Van Thieu Quan and I became sworn enemies. On the wedding day, I carried the guilt of my brother, terrified he would blame me for taking away the person he loved. But as it turns out, everything was wrong from the start. Van Thieu Quan never actually loved my brother. He mistook the person he met at 14 years old, suffering all these years, for someone who wasn't my brother Tan An, but me, Tan Han. A mix-up from memory and a mix-up in love. I tried to get out of bed, bought a bottle of wine. He met me when I was 14, and for years he pined for my brother Tan, and when in reality it was me, Tan Han. A mix-up of memories, a mix-up of love. I struggled to get off the bed, bought a bottle of booze, and went to my brother's grave alone. His grave was in the Van family cemetery. I staggered to kneel before the tombstone, looking at his smiling picture. Brother, I miss you. I raised the wine bottle in tribute to him, tears streaming down my face, but I could no longer hear his gentle voice comforting me. If I had just said my name that day, maybe things would have been different. It's all my fault. I drank half the bottle of wine, foggily hugging the tombstone and crying as if to pour out all the sorrow in my heart. But all the pain remained, refusing to ease. Before passing out, I saw Van Thieu Quan's shadow running towards me, his face panic-stricken. Han Han, why are you here? Don't pass out. I'm begging you. Looking at his frantic and worried demeanor, I couldn't help but laugh. Van Thieu Quan, I don't hate you anymore. With that said, to toast him, tears flowing non-stop, but I couldn't hear his gentle voice comforting me anymore. If I had just told him my name that day, things might have turned out differently. It's all my fault. I drank half a bottle of alcohol, dazed, clutching the gravestone, like I wanted to pour out all the sadness in my heart. But the pain remained unchanged. Before passing out, I saw Wen Shao King's figure rushing over his face, frantic. Han Han, why are you here? Don't faint, I'm begging you. Looking at his worried expression, I couldn't help but chuckle. Wen Shao King, I don't hate you anymore. After saying that, with half a bottle of liquor, I was glumly clinging to the gravestone, crying, as if that would somehow dump all my sorrows out, but all the pain still hanging around like an unwanted guest. Just before I passed out, I spotted Van rushing over, looking like a deer caught in headlights. He came rushing to me, face all panicked. Han Han, what are you doing here? Don't faint on me. I'm begging you. Seeing his utterly frantic expression made me want to chuckle. Van, I don't hate you anymore. And with that, I just had to let it out. I gently closed my eyes. The machines around me were beeping with that oh-so-familiar sound, mixed with the unpleasant smell of antiseptic. A cramp in my stomach jolted me awake, my body feeling like a soggy noodle with no strength left whatsoever. As I opened my eyes, I grimaced, realizing I was back in the hospital, surrounded by these cold white walls. Memories of that time when they chopped off my gland rushed back along with the fear from that moment, still haunting me, causing my body to involuntarily shake like a shaky Jenga tower. I yanked the IV out of my arm and stumbled my way to the therapist. I barely knew Dr. Lowe, who's only been around for a few days. But I've lost so much weight that the patient gown looks like I borrowed it from a giant. Tan Han, buddy, you're in pretty rough shape right now. Dr. Lowe looked at me with concern. He's a super chill beta, and talking to him is like snuggling into a warm blanket. Dr. Lowe, I'm truly in a world of hurt. I can't let go of the past. Those painful memories are like clingy exes that just won't take the hint. Lately, I've been fainting more than a character in a soap opera, my body shaking like it's auditioning for a horror flick totally out of control. My skin's paler than a ghost, my hair's falling out in clumps, and sometimes I even feel the urge to vomit or, experience frequent lightning-fast bathroom breaks. I'm seriously starting to think I won't be around much longer. Tan Han, you need to cut ties with those toxic people in places. You deserve a fresh start, not to be stuck in the rearview mirror of the past forever. Dr. Lowe took my hand, his face a mix of stress and shyness. If you don't mind, I'm willing to take care of you for life. I like you. That unexpected confession left me speechless. Just as I was finding my words, the door burst open like a dramatic movie scene, and Van Tu Quan stormed in with a face like thunder. You dare to steal my wife, Tan Han belongs to me. What gives you the right to like her? He lunged at Dr. Lowe, grabbing his shirt like he was ready for a street fight, his eyes blazing like they were ready to ignite everything. Your wife, Tan Han, wants a divorce. You're the one holding her hostage. Dr. Lowe didn't flinch and stared straight into Van Tu Quan's furious eyes. What does this have to do with you? Is this how a mental health professional operates? Van Tu Quan was livid, throwing insults before landing a punch. The two dove into a brawl. I wanted to break it up, but my weak body felt like it was about to collapse. In the end, Dr. Lowe delivered a kick to Van Tu Quan's stomach, knocking him off balance. If you want Tan Han to survive, then let her go. Van Tu Quan immediately froze, standing there like a deer in headlights, looking like an extra from a horror movie with injuries everywhere while stammering, "What do you mean?" Dr. Lowe smirked slightly and tossed my treatment records at him. I've kept these since I was diagnosed with depression. They detail my status and health every time I visit the doctor. Van Tu Quan hastily flipped through the pages, and by the end he was sobbing like a kid who just lost their ice cream. Han, I'm so sorry. That sorry isn't winning any awards anymore. It no longer makes me lose sleep. He crumpled to the ground, clutching the dossier like it was a winning lottery ticket, wailing without a shred of dignity. The former top dog in the Van family now looked like a lost puppy in a rainstorm, hair a mess suit wrinkled, and a face full of bruises. He cried like someone who just discovered they can't breathe. Finally, it hit me, this toxic relationship hurt more than just me. When the truth came to light, Van Tu Quan had to bear a pain that was scarily overwhelming. The person he's tormented all these years turned out to be the dream girl he always longed for. This revelation hit Van Tu Quan like a ton of bricks. He fell into a pitiful state, utterly drained. If it had been me who died that day, this secret would have stayed buried. He and my brother might have continued to live happily ever after. Van Tu Quan stopped crying. I don't hate you, but this relationship has been a mistake for far too long. I've been hurt too much. It's time for a divorce. I don't have the strength to love anyone anymore because my emotional baggage is heavy. Van Tu Quan agreed to the divorce. He promised to hit the reset button, chase after me again, and throw a wedding that was truly mine to make up for past mistakes. In the end, I finally received the divorce papers. A sense of freedom washed over me like a warm hug, as if the chains binding me for so long just snapped. On my brother's Memorial Day, I found myself back at the Van family cemetery. That day, I returned my life to my brother. 7 days after Tan Han's passing, Van Tu Quan showed up at Dr. Lowe's door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, reeking like a dumpster fire, more like a mindless zombie than a human being. Dr. Lowe didn't look much better. On his desk sat a picture of Tan Han in her prime, his eyes bloodshot. Van Tu Quan swayed over and hugged the photo tightly, half laughing, half crying. When Dr. Lowe tried to snatch it back, he swung a powerful punch. You deceived me. You said if I let Han go, she'd survive, but now she's gone. She's no longer alive. Van Tu Quan shrieked in despair. Dr. Lowe let him throw his tantrum until both were too exhausted to stand and collapsed onto the floor. Dr. Lowe's face was also wet with tears. When she first arrived, she told me she had lost her gland and the most important baby. She said she wasn't a complete Omega anymore and that no one would love her. Then when you all found her, she told me it was too late, that time was up. It wasn't just emotion spiraling out of control. Her body couldn't take it anymore. Dr. Lowe took the picture, slowly stood up. His face was a canvas of anguish, and what drove him to desire death wasn't just a late love, but a broken body and a heart overflowing with regret. Han lived in constant guilt toward her brother. It was both a ghost and an obsession. I couldn't save her. Van Tu Quan quietly left. Outside, the sky was a thick blanket of clouds, like the heavy mood he carried at that moment. He bought a bouquet of flowers and placed it in front of Tan An's grave, waiting a long time before leaving. The next day, Van Tu Quan sought out the old villa of the Tan family. Following the threads of memory, he stepped into the small courtyard where he once lived after injuring himself at the age of 14. It was here he first met Tan Han wrapped in the soft embrace of her arms. Tan Han, this time it's your turn to hug me. Van Tu Quan smiled tightly, holding the urn lying down in precisely that spot from years ago. A few days later, news broke about Van's conglomerate president. My eyes were all red and puffy. Van Tu Quan stumbled over, clutching a photo tightly to his chest, both laughing and crying at the same time. When Dr. Lo tried to snatch the photo from him, he swung a punch like he was in a boxing match. You tricked me. You said if I let Han go, he'd be fine. But now he's dead. He's not alive anymore. Van Tu Quan screamed in despair. Dr. Lo just let him go ahead and vent his anger on him. He screamed that if I let go of Han, he'd survive, but now he's dead, no longer living. When Xiao King screamed in a breakdown, the doctor let him vent a bit of anger out on himself. Eventually, they both collapsed to the floor, utterly exhausted. Dr. Lo's face was also streaked with tears. When he first arrived, he told me he lost his gland and his most precious child. He said he was no longer a complete Omega, that from now on, no one would ever love him. Then, when you guys found him, he told me it was all too late, that there wasn't enough time anymore. It wasn't just the emotional roller coaster between them, but his body couldn't take it any longer. Dr. Lo picked up the photo and slowly stood up. The pain on his face was a longing for death, driven not only by love that came too late, but also by a battered body and a heart overflowing with regret. Han lived in constant guilt towards his brother. It was both a haunting shadow and an obsession. I couldn't save him. The emotional chaos among them was too much, and his body could no longer handle it. The doctor picked up the photo, slowly standing up. His face was filled with pain, the kind that made him long for death. What tormented him wasn't just late love, but a failing body and a heart filled with regret. Han always lived with guilt towards her brother. It was both a shadow and an obsession. I couldn't save him. Van Tu Quan quietly walked away. Outside, the sky was heavy with dark clouds, just like the weight on his heart at that moment. He bought a bouquet of flowers and placed it at Qian An's grave, waiting a long time before he decided to leave. The next day, Van Tu Quan headed to the old Tang family villa. Following his memories, he made his way to the small yard where he had stayed when he was injured at the age of 14. It was here that he first met Tang Han, wrapped in the soft embrace of his arms. Tang Han, this time it's my turn to hold you. He smiled, gripping the urn tightly lying down right where he did all those years ago. A few days later, the news hit that the chairman of the Van Group. Your softness envelops me. Tan Han, now it's your turn to hug me. Wen Shao King smiled as he held the urn tightly lying down in the exact spot from years ago. A few days later, the news aired about the chairman of the corporation. She took the plunge at the crack of dawn on the 17th of October in an old mansion, still clutching the urn of her late ex-wife. At 27 years old, I'm Huang Duong, a top-tier alpha and the sole heir to the Van family. To everyone else, I'm practically royalty, a high and mighty prodigy. While other kids got to chill and play, I was stuck with strict training. From day one, I was knee-deep in studying literature, martial arts, and sharpshooting. You name it. My body, a walking tapestry of scars. The Van household is about as warm and fuzzy as a cold winter's night. My parents, they married more out of duty than love, totally devoid of any feelings. So you can guess I've always loathed the chains of so-called compatibility. At 14, I was completely worn out, every bone in my body screaming for a break, and I bolted from home. The mansion next door looked so cozy and inviting, so I snuck into the abandoned yard to catch a quiet breather. After flunking a task, my coach laid down some serious punishment. I was feverish and battered, dreaming about my pheromones running wild and out of control. Just then, I caught this refreshing minty scent wrapping around me like a warm blanket. It was an Omega Petite, but buckets of courage. He wrapped his arms around me, using his pheromones to soothe me like never before. I asked his name, and he said, I'm Tan An. That name stuck with me for years until I finally found him again in college. But boy, that's when the mix-up began. Tan Han, bless his heart, was clueless. His pheromones were just like Tan An's, but he had the audacity to go by his brother's name, Bach Quiet Kwang, in my head. The Omega I had always pined for ended up being Tan An, all my love misplaced. When Tan An passed away, I thought my one true love had vanished forever. A nameless rage and yearning flew towards Tan Han, the one I truly loved. When Tan Han told me I had confused him for someone else, the first thought in my head was disbelief. I was scared and running away from the thought. How could I mix up the guy I had tormented for so long and hurt so deeply I could never admit that he was the one I had really been searching for? So I fled like a coward. Because of that, I missed my chance to make things right with the guy I love. After Tan An was gone, Tan Han was left with no one to care for him. Everyone was throwing him under the bus. Some even wished that the dead one was him, including me. My evasion had become the very noose tightening around him. The regret hit me hard. I could have saved him. I used to think that after the divorce, Tan Han could let go of the past and free himself from inner turmoil, but who knew that was just the first step in his journey to freedom? Fresh blood at the tombstone broke my heart in the worst way possible. Not even a therapist could save him. Tan Han had never forgiven himself since the moment his brother saved him. But no worries, I'll be there for him while I'm still alive. We've lost so many years. After I kick the bucket, I'll find him at the Nai Bridge. When we finally meet, I'll hold his hand and say, "Don't be scared, I'm here to keep you company. Music." Am I music? Even the therapist couldn't save him. Tang Han had never forgiven himself since his brother saved him. But that's okay. I'll be there for him while I'm still alive. We let so many years slip away. After I die, I'll find him on the Nai Bridge. When I do, I'll take his hand and say, "Don't be scared, I'll be right there with you." Music. How many years it took. After death, I'll find him by the Nai Bridge. When I find him, I'll hold his hand and say, "Don't be scared, I'll go with you." Music. I love you, music.